In this video, we'll discuss mostly about the type of databases, right? So nowadays in market, we can see so many databases are available, right? So when we are going to develop any kind of application, we must need to offer some database. So based on our requirement, based on the flexibility, we need to offer some database. It's all depend upon the design of the system and the requirement, right? So whatever the database we are going to opt, it's completely depend upon the system design and requirement, right? So that database can be any type of database. It can be relational database, it can be non-relational database, it can be object oriented database, cloud database, network database, enterprise database, right? So in this video mostly we'll focus about the NoSQL database, right? So what is a NoSQL database? If somebody is saying you that NoSQL database, what do you mean by that? From the name itself you can say that NoSQL means we are not going to follow the SQL approach. We would be knowing that what is a SQL. It's a structured query language, right? As we told, we have so many type of database available in the market, like relational and non-relational database. Relational database is nothing but a structured database, right? So this a relational database, when we are going to store any information in a relational database, we used to have a table. In the table we used to have a column and row. For each entry we used to create one new row, and column size is always fixed. Okay, it's not like fixed, you can change the column size anytime, but the thing is like it's not dynamic. In a table, suppose you have a 5 column, so it will be always 5 column. You can store only 5 data in a 5 column. If you are trying to store some data where you are passing 6 column, it will not store, it will simply throw the exception, right? So let's come to the point. NoSQL database, from the name itself you can see NoSQL means no SQLs, right? Means we are not going to follow the approach that we used to have in SQL database, right? Here we don't have the table. We are not going to store the data in a table, format of table, as we do in SQL. Based on the data model, NoSQL database has been classified in different types. That can be document type, that can be key value, wide column, and graph. In this video we will discuss about mostly about the document data type. Nowadays, if you talk about the document database, the only one database will come into picture, that is nothing but MongoDB, and it is one of the most commonly used database in industry nowadays. Okay, this was derived during 2000, right? Before that, if you talk about 1980, that time a relational database was so famous, most of people were going for relational database only. But as the time passes, in 2000 around, people are mostly talking about the flexibility, they are mostly talking about the simplicity and robustness. We already have the operational relational database in the market, right? That time, so people were fed up. They were looking for some different kind of database which is more simpler, more reliable, and more faster. And there is provision to do lot of things like a dynamic column, right? So those kind of behavior we can get it in a NoSQL database, that is nothing but a MongoDB. Okay, so the next thing is why we should go for NoSQL database. Right. Again, whenever we are going to develop any kind of application, you must need to have some database. Now the question is which database you should go for, whether you should go for SQL, whether you should go for NoSQL. It's all depend upon the requirement. Being as architect, whenever we are going to design any system, we used to have some common question in our mind. We have the set of requirement that we are going to implement it. Behind that, behind the scene, we have some hypothesis like what are the basic requirement that we used to have from any kind of a database when we are going to update for any kind of application. The first thing that it should be fast paced. Nowadays, most of places, in most of industry, we are following agile, where we may observe the rapid changes, right? So in this kind of environment, NoSQL database is very friendly. We can store non-structured data and even structured data also. Suppose, just in a simple way, you think you have a 5 column in SQL, so you can, when we are going to store any data, you can send data for 5 column only. If you are sending for 6th column, it will simply throw the exception, because there is no way to send a dynamic column data. But here in NoSQL database, the columns are dynamic. In a first entry, you are sending 3 row. In a second entry, when we are going to store something, you can send 5 column, 10 column, or based on the requirement. You can send any number of column anytime. It's completely dynamic. It can store huge amount of data, and it is horizontally scalable. If the data size is getting increased day by day, MongoDB will take care of that automatically. You no need to worry about that. And the most important thing is, nowadays the most of application that we are going to implement, that is mostly about the microservice, where we may need to have live streaming, real-time streaming. Okay, so this, for this kind of requirement, we must go for NoSQL database. That is nothing but MongoDB. Even being an architect, I have experience in MongoDB, and since last 5-6 years I'm using that, and I can see this is the best database if your requirement is matching with the feature that this MongoDB is providing.